So in order to talk about solving absolute value equations, we're going to talk about what is absolute value. So first of all, our definition for absolute value is going to be the distance a number is from 0. Okay, so absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. So in other words, if I pick what numbers are 7 units away from 0, so I'm looking at this right here, what numbers are 7 units away from 0? So if I put a dot at -7, and then over here at 7. So I'm talking about both -7 and 7, if I look, are 7 units away from 0. So my distance from here to here is 7, and my distance from here to here is 7. So that's why we say, what is the absolute value of x equals 7? We would say our answer is x is equal to either a positive or a negative 7. And that would be our answer. Okay, so our first problem is we are going to solve x is equal to, absolute value of x is equal to 5. That's what we want to solve first. So to do that, what I do is take and drop it down, and I just set x is equal to a positive 5. And then I also take the other side of that and drop it down, and I say x is equal to -5. So those are my two solutions, and if I write those out, my answer is going to look like this. So I'm going to say x is equal to plus or minus 5. And that would be my answer to both of those. If I plug in positive 5 and take the absolute value of that, I get 5. If I plug in -5 in for x and take the absolute value of that, I get 5. Okay, our next problem is if we want to solve the absolute value equation of the absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to 3. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get the absolute value by itself. So I'm right here. I want to get the absolute value by itself. So the first thing I have to do is I'm going to ignore the absolute value of x, and I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So it's just like a normal equation. So that's going to give me the absolute value of x is equal to 1. So now that I have the absolute value on one side by itself, I could again bring it down, make the positive side. So that's going to be the absolute value, dropping the absolute value of sign. That's going to be x equals 1. And then on the other side, I'm going to have x equals -1. So I combine those two solutions together, and I write my answer as x is equal to plus or minus 1. So in our next example, we have another absolute value equation. We have the absolute value of x plus 9. So again, to say that one more time, I have the absolute value of x, and then plus 9 equals 5. So again, the first thing I want to do is get the absolute value by itself. So here I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. And that's going to give me the absolute value of x is equal to -4. Now, here's the question. If I take the absolute value of something, can I ever get a negative answer? And the answer is no, I can't. So to find the absolute value of x, since I'm trying to find a distance from 0, I can't have -4 as a distance. So whenever I isolate the absolute value by itself, as in I have it right here, I have the absolute value right here, but then I'm trying to say that that's equal to -4. Since that can't happen, I'm going to write my solution as, I'm going to say either no solution, or I can write it as does not exist. So either one of those two answers will work for this. In my next example, I have the absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to 7. So the first thing I want to do, and we've talked about this before, is I want to get the absolute value by itself. Well, if I look at this, I already have the absolute value on one side by itself right here. So I'm going to take the absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to 7. So then the next thing I want to do is I want to, right here, drop the absolute value. So again, I set it up as one positive, one negative. So to set up my positive, I'm going to bring this over this way, and I'm going to get rid of the absolute value signs. So I'm going to rewrite this as a little one-step equation of x plus 2 is equal to positive 7. And then on the other side, I'm going to take and write the negative part of it. So here I'm going to set it up as x plus 2 without the absolute value signs is equal to, now I'm going to take the opposite of 7, I'm going to take -7. And then what I'm going to do is solve both of those equations independently. So on the one side, I'm going to subtract 2 and subtract 2 here. So I'm going to have x is equal to 5. Then on the other side, on the negative side, I'm going to subtract 2 from there as well. Notice I'm getting two different answers. So I'm going to have x on the left is equal to, and I'm going to say -9. So those are my two possible answers for that absolute value equation. So again, to write my solutions, I'm going to write those as x is equal to 5 or -9. So if I plug in either one of those two things for x, 5 or -9, that would give me +7 as a solution. Okay, our next example, we want to solve this equation here. -5 times the absolute value of x minus 10 is equal to -35. Well, if you look at this right away, you might say, okay, well, that's equal to a negative number, so there is no solution. But that's not true yet. I have to get the absolute value by itself on one side of the equation. Then I can check and see if I could come up with a solution or not. So this is no different. If I would rewrite this as something like this, if I would say -5 times the absolute value of whatever, we don't care, is equal to -35. So pretend the absolute value is not even there. Just go ahead and cover it up. And let me rewrite my numbers real quick here. Okay, so to get the absolute value symbols by itself, I can see clearly that if I divide by -5 on both sides, okay, that's going to give me my absolute value by itself. We'll erase that and try another one. So that's going to give me the absolute value on one side by itself is equal to, now negative over a negative is going to give me a positive number. So -35 divided by -5 is going to be +7. Now, if I go back and take whatever was inside my absolute value sign and plug that in, so now I'm going to plug in my x minus 10. Okay, now I have the absolute value all by itself on one side. So to show that again over here on the underneath the problem, again, I would take this whole thing and I would divide by -5. So if I do that, again, this is going to give me the absolute value of x minus 10 is equal to 7. So again, to drop the absolute value sign, I am going to make my positive over here. And I'm going to rewrite this without the absolute value sign now. So I'm going to say this is x minus 10 is equal to 7. And then I'm going to rewrite it again to drop the absolute value sign. And I'm going to write this as x minus 10 is equal to negative 7. So I have to write it one with the positive 7 and again with the negative 7. So I do the math here. My algebra, I'm going to add 10 to both sides, add 10 to both sides here, and I'm going to get x is equal to 17. So there's one of my answers. Then I go over to the other side, and again, add 10 here, add 10 here. So this is going to leave me with x on the left side is equal to negative 7 plus 10 is positive 3. So my two solutions are, I'm going to say x is equal to 17 or x is equal to 3. And those would be my two answers for that. So there's one more problem here. I want you to try this one on your own in your notes. We want to solve 4 times the absolute value of x minus 9, and plus 2 is equal to 22. So try this on your own. I'll give you a few minutes to work on it. As a matter of fact, it'd probably be good if you hit the pause button right now and take some time just to look at it and work at it. My big hint would be to solve like a 2-step equation. Okay, so rewrite it, ignore the absolute value. Okay, you could rewrite it like this. You could say 4 times the absolute value of whatever plus 2 is equal to 22. So I'll give you a few minutes, then go back, take a look at it, and the answer when you hit play again should pop up on the screen.